there's no click-through rate on like presence in the school that once was giving you 50 students and now is only giving you 3.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your no-fluff guide to artificial intelligence in higher ed. I'm Mallory Wilsey, bringing nearly 20 years of edtech and marketing expertise straight to your earbuds. Higher ed leaders are expected to master AI overnight, but let's be real, no one has time to sift through every headline, hot take, or research report. That's why every Monday I'll break down what actually matters, fast, clear, and to the point. Want to sound like the smartest person in the room at your next team meeting? You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. On today's episode, there's a trap in enrollment that nobody warns you about. It's residual momentum. It's the year your funnel looks fine, right before everything stops working. Today, we're going to talk about how to see it before it shows up on your dashboard. I'm joined by Megan Cabrera, Director of Strategic Enrollment Management at Okanagan College in British Columbia. Megan has spent 20 plus years across marketing, recruitment, advising, and operations, which is exactly the cross-functional lens this conversation needs. Megan, welcome to the Pulse.
Thank you, Mallory. Great to be here.
I am so excited to have this interview with you. And before we hit record, you're telling me a little bit about your love of pickleball. Tell me more.
So my husband and I fell into pickleball. A friend of ours built a pickleball court in their backyard and just invited us over. And we thought, this is crazy. Why is it called pickleball? And before we knew it, we bought paddles by the end of the night so that we could go back and play regularly. And we just loved it. It's fun to play as partners, but it's also just like the camaraderie. And I love watching it as much as I love playing it. It's like a little bit volleyball, a little bit ping pong.
I feel like post-pandemic, the pickleball craze has just not died off in any means. And I live 2 blocks away from a pickleball court that is constant, especially in the summer, just constantly there are people playing. Yeah, it looks great. I've just never done it. And I have cousins who yell at me. They're like, come on, they think I'd be good at it, but I've just never picked up a paddle. I think it's a good sport for everyone, right?
It is. And it's less impact on your joints as we get a little older. We don't want to do ourselves any dirties by playing pickleball, but it's really, really fun. And you can play at your pace. I play with a women's group from time to time and then mixed leagues. It's just fun.
Oh, so good. I have a milestone birthday coming up in August and I need lower impact joint friendly activities. So
I turned 50.
So let's get into our topic today. What I just said, enrollment leaders have a visibility problem. It's not a data problem. A lot of institutions have more dashboards than they know what to do with. They have a visibility problem, and the dashboard's the last place that failure shows up, not the first. In the spring, Megan posted something on LinkedIn that I saw and is really the reason why I invited her on this podcast. She wrote about pulling marketing investment from a market during a tight budget year. In her post, she noted applications held steady, inquiry activity looked stable, and everything seemed fine. But 2 years later, the funnel collapsed and the rebuild cost more than the original investment ever would have. That story is the spine of today's conversation, but I think it points to something bigger. Whether you're watching a partnership market, a feeder school relationship, or your own internal handoffs between marketing and advising, the same failure keeps repeating. Each silo reports success independently, but no one owns the seams, and everyone keeps reading the dashboard like everything is fine until it isn't. So now we're in a scenario where we're also introducing AI into this environment, and we wonder why it doesn't fix anything. It really just scales the mess. So Megan, let's get into it. Take me back to that budget cycle, right? Your post had to be written about something. So you pulled a marketing investment out of a market. What happened?
It's interesting as you're looking at your budget every single year. You kind of have to scale and unscale. And we were in a moment where we wanted to invest in a new market, but we were also in a budget crunch. So we looked at the map of what we had in front of us and decided, you know what, we've been in this market for so long. it's just a feeder for us. We're good. We're not going to invest anymore in the market for at least a couple of years and see if we can redirect those funds, which notionally sounds like a great decision. And then things changed. And it wasn't necessarily just the investment, it was also our partners changed. Our partners who were once not degree granting colleges, like Okanagan College, became degree granting colleges. And I was at a university working as a feeder, taking those students. The challenge for us was as soon as they were like making their own cake, there was no room for us. And so what became a really like fluid relationship where we were just opening our doors to them. We had relationships with all the high schools. Now we stopped investing in the market and they started taking those students and putting them into their own degree program. So rather than, start here and there, start here, finish here. And so for us, that really meant that, we missed a moment. If we would have stayed in the market, continued marketing, continued relationship building with the high schools, even with our partner that became our competitor, if we would have continued the relationship, I think we would have seen a much softer shift. But unfortunately, what we learned was it's a great example of why higher education actually needs that longitudinal market intelligence versus just the annual recruitment reporting and dashboards like you talked about. We need to see that big vertical plan, but we also need the horizontal view of what's happening with our partners. And not having seen that coming, we made an error. It meant we had to do some pivots, and it's really meant for me that I had to rethink, how I plan. I don't make those mistakes twice. So it means really kind of starting to look at markers to be able to anticipate these flows and how we have the relationship in the beginning. So at that previous institution, we had to reduce investment. What it meant was I had to kind of, redirect the whole flow and focus because that market had collapsed for us. And that was a big piece. We were seeing, I would say about 25 to 50 students just from that one feeder school that now became like three to five.
So the short-term, maybe budget gain, where you favored reducing the spend, kind of showed up a few cycles later with a real impact on the number of actual like butts and seats from those once priority schools. What's interesting about that is like, I feel like the scrutiny that you must face from your CFO on, and I certainly annually, but I'm sure much more frequently than that, where they're saying things like, well, like, show me the dashboard, or like, what's the, like, we love performance metrics. What's the open rate? What's the click-through rate, right? Well, like, there's no click-through rate on like presence in the school that once was giving you 50 students and now is only giving you 3. So like, what are the early signals when you can't rely on like the dashboard metric?
Mm-hmm. I think even before the early signals, you have to realize that markets will produce momentum for quite some time, right? So you think you're okay. And every CFO, going to your questions, every CFO is like, yeah, that's great. We're going to still get the benefit, but we don't have to spend the money. Hallelujah. Right? But the signals are different because 2 years later, that lag started to show up. It didn't show up right away. It showed up a little later. And that's when we saw the inquiry volume softening. The engagement quality really was starting to see a full. Competitor visibility was one of the pieces. We started seeing more competitors coming up. So now, to answer your question, what I look at is engagement velocity. Like, what is the engagement looking like? What's the market penetration? And you don't know that unless you start surveying regularly your market and that area. So having that regional market survey, school relationships, and I'm talking high school, right? Because now we're both going for high school, both that competitor and ourselves. Before we were going directly to the college because it was a doorway. Now we have to start at the high school age. The conversion quality, really starting to look at the conversion quality as an early marker so that you start to see, oh, it's going down. Like, why is this going down? And then the long-term persistence outcomes, I would say, would be another piece. And to find them, it's not as easy as you would think, right? you have to have that built into your plan to start to go, how am I keeping those markets active? Because we typically think, how am I keeping my marketing campaigns running? But now, how do I keep the market active with relationships? Because that's the relationship-based side, which gives you the indicator that things might be shifting. As soon as your high school partners start like calling you less, start engaging less in events and whatnot, that's when you start to realize, oh shoot, like there's a sign, right? So slower response times in that piece. The lower email engagement's another one. And so really we looked at our dashboards, but then we also looked at the relationship management side as another key indicator.
Is there a way you can like metric out the relationship side though? Or is it just like, does it rely on Megan in her office and her gut feeling of what is going on right now versus previously? Because like, if I'm a leader and I hear that, that is not scalable or predictable. That introduces risk. I start to get, clammy palms. I don't know that I can sell that to the cabinet, but yet there is something so like very human about like, yeah, sometimes you just got to know the relationships in order to know if they're working or not. So I don't know. Can you sound off on that?
Yeah. And I think it's your staff, right? Because at the level, depending on what level you are in your organization, you need your teams to have that pulse, because it can't just be a Megan gut instinct when it comes to markets across, both international and national borders. So I'm now working in a regional system, which is a lot easier to have that pulse. But when you're in an institution that is looking at a much broader base, it's making sure that you build your portfolios. So my staff were built in regional portfolios. So they had the ownership of that region, meaning they report in on those regional metrics. They report in on the engagement in the events that they're doing. So we started high school counselor engagement, right? So that would be a part of a metric, that there is some metrics that also support the instinct, and making sure that you're consistently in that market in a different way than just market to campaigns to your students. It's those partners that we didn't see coming. We didn't see the shifts coming. Yeah.
And a lot of this knowledge and a lot of the realities of what we're talking about, I do think live in the seams of things. I kind of set that up a bit in the intro. But when I think about the student journey now, of course, listeners of The Pulse are educated and smart. They know it is not linear by any means, but yet like many of our institutions do kind of treat it like this relay race where we're passing the baton, admissions to advising, to comms, to academics, and each one of those siloed units has their own scoreboards or dashboards or whatever it is. And it feels like the pass of that baton is everyone's job, which makes it nobody's job. Have you been able to solve for any of that?
I think that is the question of today. Like, we won't be able to see success in higher ed if we continue building our complex systems around departmental handoffs. Now we're building a system where it's not a handoff, it's a handover, right? So if you hand off, let's just say as a recruiter, your focus is applications, right? All right, we're looking really good in recruitment because applications are up. Guess what? Admissions is really suffering with the process because applications are up, so the process has gone down. So yeah, one department's looking really good on the KPIs. Those key performance indicators are not looking so good in another department. So building your KPIs in an integrated way where we have responsibility throughout the journey is key. And we're not built that way. We just aren't. Even having staff cross-departmental supporting each other so that you can start to build that integration so that there isn't a gap for seams and fallout. Here we are in the summer melt. Great, our system's looking really good for fall. Then comes summer melt. So what's the registration offices doing to support that? How are we supporting them so we have one learner, one record, one journey, and there's no fallout? It's a brilliant question, because that's where we are institutionally. As a strategic enrollment management professional, for me, I see myself as I would say a funnel architect, right? Looking at all of, where's the holes? Do we have a hole in the bucket, dear Lila? Oh, it's looking like it's here. How do we start to work to support that team? Because no one's successful if not all departments are. So that, I think you hit it on the head. That is that's going to be success or no success for us as institutions in the future. Silos are no longer something to be celebrated in any way. One successful silo doesn't mean a successful institution.
Yeah. Now, I have to imagine you've started to implement some solutions. And I've heard a bit about this digital check-in station that you built. Tell me more about that.
So because I would say one of the joys I've had since joining Okanagan College is our leadership team created a leadership council. So we all sit in the same room. We look at each other. We talk together. We get challenged. We challenge each other. We are really working across that student journey. And as a result, we built relationships across departmentally. And so we had a situation with everyone's going through workforce reduction. We lost our front staff. So what are we going to do? How are we going to make a great student experience if we don't have somebody checking in staff for their appointments? Which you kind of think it's kind of archaic too, right? Like we set up a system, we've emailed the student, we could set up a receiving system. So we worked with IT, said, here's our problem. And they said, what about a check-in system? So we created a digital check-in system. So now the student comes to our office. The onus is on them to put the data in. Why are they coming to see us? Is there any friction they're experiencing? What is it they need that we can solve? They check themselves in. They do all that pre-work. We don't have to do inquiry tracking at that point because they're doing it for us. And then they check themselves in, and then we get a Teams message saying, John Smith is in the lobby for his appointment. And then you can email John and say, I'll be 5 minutes just finishing up. John knows he's okay and he can come in for a session. And so that's an example, going back to your question about AI, where AI can help us, right? Because it's actually servicing a purpose for us to be able to have that digital check-in board. It also gives us that cross-institutional data that we need to know what's the friction points that we're seeing that students are going through. We're able to use that data now from the check-in system to rechange and focus our website on the holes in the bucket. Because it's like, oh my goodness, look at the inquiries we've been getting around the nursing program. Okay, we can fix this up. So it goes both ways to servicing a better experience and reducing friction, but also helping us just overall extend our reach across departmental.
Yeah, so smart to take that information and use it proactively, not just reactively. I think that is brilliant. And you brought up AI, so I'm going to follow this thread. Like, where have you watched AI actually accelerate a broken handoff? Because I think there's a lot of that in the seams. Has it made anything harder for you?
I think institutionally, I would say we would be a early mover in some standpoints, and it's been great on lots of fronts. But when it comes to communications, if your communications aren't good and now your AI is pumping it out, or your knowledge base isn't great, and guess what? AI is telling the wrong story because you haven't fixed your back end. You've just caused a hornet's nest to unfold. So you have to have your work done before you start implementing something that's going to expedite the process, expedite information and communications. I'd say the biggest thing is communications in your knowledge base. Whatever's feeding that AI, if it's not right, it's only going to exacerbate the situation.
Yeah. The idea of data cleanup and content cleanup has been a recurring theme, I feel like, on a lot of episodes over the last few months when we get to talking about AI and just you serve your future self so much more when you spend it's maybe annoying and painful and long, but like just taking the time to fix the data that's going into the system. Speaking of systems, let's talk about CRMs for a second. Something tells me as a strategic enrollment management leader, you've encountered a CRM or two in your day. I think a lot of institutions think they're like, oh, we've got the CRM now, we're good. We've got visibility. We can track the clicks. We've got the information. But I don't know that that's true. And I'm curious for your perspective.
It's funny you say you've got the CRM, because when I started here, we went through a situation institutionally before I started that lost all CRM capability. And in 2002, I was a part of implementing the CRM system at my previous institution. So we're talking like over 20 years of CRM experience. And I'm like, they don't have this set up. Like, we need the data. But it comes down to three things in my mind, as far as like where the breakdown happens. If you don't, a CRM can be all things or it can be nothing. And it comes down to three things, like disconnected systems. If your systems are not connected, guess what? Neither will your journey be. Neither will you be able to see the holes in the bucket. Then the second is inconsistent data governance. Like where's your institutional data governance lying, and how are you working that through across the fabric of all departments? Going back to your question about, fallout in the seams. And then the third is a fragmented institutional ownership. So we used to think, and we've just talked about, no more silos. Like, silos are not healthy for institutions. So that fragmented institutional ownership, then again, in your CRM system, if that's fragmented, then so is that data. So we're in a situation right now where we're really building the infrastructure to support it from scratch. And what does that look like in a system now where AI and software, let's be honest, is changing every 6 months? So getting a CRM system where the data and the software is going to change in 6 months, what does that mean for your teams? The other piece that I haven't talked about is adaptability in your teams. Your teams have to be adaptable to an ever-changing, evolving software as a service. It's gonna change all the time. And so last year and a half, we went from Excel spreadsheets to now getting teams around working in a CRM system. And now I'm like, don't get too comfortable, because guess what? It's changing, and we have to now be evolving with that change. And so that's a hard piece for people to wrap their head around. Your other piece around the visibility of the data, right? Like that shared data definitions. I've been in so many meetings over the last 25 years where you think you've got your numbers right and someone says, that's not right. And so making sure that definitions are consistent, everybody's singing from the same song sheet. I'm sure my team that will watch this podcast later will say, well, we've heard that one a bit, like singing from the same song sheet. Integrating your system so that like it's all aligned, and then that life cycle governance.
Wow. I think that the change management piece is the thing that everybody underestimates, especially when it comes to new technology. I think that the vendors underestimate it. I think that the people buying it underestimate it. And like you said, when everything is just like, we are just in a cycle where technology is changing quickly. And we got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So Megan, as we are wrapping this conversation up, we have covered so many topics, but I think one area we haven't necessarily talked as much about is retention. And from your lens in strategic enrollment management, I'm curious where that shows up on your dashboards. I have a friend of the Enrollify network, Devin Perguson. He's at Forsyth Tech in North Carolina. And underneath his purview, he has marketing, recruitment, student care, and onboarding. Like, all these teams report up into him. And I know retention shows up on his dashboard because he wrote an article for Inside Higher Ed about it, and I'll link to that in the show notes for listeners. I want to get your thoughts. You work in Canada, so things are a little bit different. And is his model your model? Do you agree with that model, or is there some version of, some shared accountability across these different previously siloed units that doesn't necessarily require collapsing the org chart quite the same way that FTCC did?
I feel for your friend because he's not alone. I think a lot of institutions want to consolidate under one leader so that we can, keep everybody consistent, make sure handoffs are all responsible, going back to that question we had earlier. But higher ed success isn't going to belong to institutions that operate in that model where we're trying to be all things to all people. In fact, I think it's going to operate as an integrated learner ecosystem where accountability integration is built into it versus what, I think you said Devin. Yeah, what Devin is being asked to do isn't integration accountability. He's got all accountability. Some institutions are absolutely going to move towards a centralized life cycle divisions because the learner journey is becoming increasingly interconnected. That said, the power in higher ed is, if you look at it, let's just talk about the multi-tool, right? We can all go buy a multi-tool to fix our house and have, the hammer, all of these different pieces, and it looks good because it's in one place. But are those the best for each of the things we need? No, right? So if we have an amazing IT department, we have an awesome student care area like Devin's got under him, marketing, recruitment, all doing functionally very well, and we can integrate the responsibility, breaking down the silo. I think that's where success lies. That becomes an ecosystem that really starts to nurture the student journey. We're striving to get to one learner, one record, one journey at Okanagan College. That doesn't happen, in our current model because we're still trying to break down some of the silos, but we're getting there to a point where we can integrate that accountability. Start building our KPIs, key performance indicators, into a flow where everybody's responsible for one another. Just like I talked to in the beginning, yes, we're looking great in applications, but admissions is struggling because there's so many applications coming in, their process. So how do we start to build an integrated KPI where I have accountability for that, even though it's not my department? And stop saying, whose department is this? No, it's our student, right? It's not whose department. Like, that needs to be eradicated from our verbiage in institutions. It's more, where's the student journey and how can I help the student progress? That's where retention is. And, students, I think of our dean of students and the pressure he must feel, that's now starting to feel like a shared responsibility. We're building systems where we're integrating that accountability. And I think that's the magic for the future, rather than a disconnected, siloed, administrative, operationally driven. And so for Devin, I do feel for him. I think that's a lot to manage effectively, unless he's building his systems within those departments, to really be integrated as well. That's a lot of pressure. One institutional aligned experience. That's really where we should be, is one institutionally aligned experience.
If only our institutions were built from the ground up that way many, many years ago.
Zero-based budgets, right? Let's start from scratch.
Oh my gosh. We're
not there, but we could get there. There's, it's funny because there's a quote that I really love, and it's a futurist, Alvin Toffler, and he says, the illiterate of the 21st century are not going to be those who don't read or write. It's those that can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. That's where we are. We have to unlearn some of these things because we can't start from scratch. We just have to kind of unlearn the way we do things. So, yeah,
it's brilliant. That's brilliant. And you know what? I'm going to repeat something you said about 20 minutes ago. You said that you don't make mistakes twice. And fire. We are going to have to check in with you, 6 or 12 months from now, Megan, to see how some of these changes, some of the things that you were putting in place to achieve that, one student, everyone's accountable. We are all operating from the same set of information and shared responsibility. That certainly is the right mindset, and the proof will be in the execution, right?
Totally. Oh, yeah. I would love to be able to have something exciting to produce and share with you. So that's the journey, and I'm not in it alone. Thankfully, we're very, very much a team here. So I'd love to come back and share, because we're not even landed on our CRM. So going back to your question with the CRM, let me tell you what that journey is going to look like, because it's evolving every 5 minutes. So yeah.
Well, we look forward to the check-in next year when there's some action to report on. Megan, it was so lovely having this conversation with you today. Where can folks find you if they want to connect? LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Megan Cabrera, and my email is mcabrera at okanagan.bc.ca. So happy to connect. Thank you, Mallory.
Terrific. All right, folks, we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Pulse. The show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.